In the world of royalty, every second matters. Every glance, every movement, every breath is carefully orchestrated and monitored. But what happens when the unthinkable occurs? When a mother's worst nightmare becomes reality in the most public of settings? When the very people sworn to protect the royal family faced their greatest test not from an external threat, but from a moment of pure parental terror? This is the story of a single afternoon that changed everything. A story where protocol met panic, where duty collided with desperation, and where the human heart proved stronger than any security measure ever devised. It's a tale that reminds us that behind the crowns and ceremonies, behind the titles and traditions, beats the heart of a mother who, for one terrifying moment, couldn't find her child. What you're about to read isn't just another royal story. It's a raw, authentic account of how quickly everything can change, how fast certainty can turn to chaos, and how the bonds of family transcend even the most rigid of royal protocols. This is the day when Kate, the Princess of Wales, experienced every parent's worst fear, and how one royal guard's quick thinking prevented a crisis that could have shaken the monarchy to its core. Prepare yourself for a story that will make you hold your breath, question everything you think you know about royal life, and ultimately remind you that no matter how high the walls or how tight the security, the love of a mother knows no boundaries. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine courtyard of Kensington Palace as Catherine, Princess of Wales, adjusted the small pearl earrings that had once belonged to Diana. Today was meant to be special, one of those carefully orchestrated royal engagements that would be remembered for all the right reasons. The annual Children's Garden Festival at Hampton Court Palace was an event close to her heart, combining her passion for early childhood development with her love of horticulture. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell had been assigned to the Royal Protection Detail for 3 years, but mornings like these still filled her with a mixture of professional pride and nervous energy. As she conducted her final security briefing with the team, her eyes automatically scanned every corner, every potential entry point, every face in the growing crowd of staff members preparing for the day's events. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass and the distant sound of children's laughter from the neighboring school where students were preparing to meet the princess. Kate emerged from the palace doors at precisely 9:30, her navy blue dress catching the morning light as she moved with the practiced grace that had become her trademark. 7-year-old Prince George walked beside her, his school uniform impeccable despite his obvious excitement about missing regular classes for what he called Mummy's Flower Day. 4-year-old Princess Charlotte skipped ahead, her pigtails bouncing as she chased imaginary butterflies, while 2-year-old Prince Louis toddled between his parents, his chubby fingers wrapped around a small wooden toy car that had become his constant companion. The royal convoy was a sight to behold. 3 identical black Range Rovers sat in perfect formation, their engines purring quietly while protection officers made final checks on communication equipment. Detective Inspector Mitchell took her position in the lead vehicle, her trained eyes never stopping their systematic sweep of the surroundings. Behind her, Kate's personal protection officer, Detective Sergeant James Rodriguez, helped settle the family into the middle vehicle. His gentle manner with the children had earned him their trust over the past 18 months, making him an invaluable member of the team. As the convoy pulled away from Kensington Palace, the morning seemed to promise nothing but success. The route to Hampton Court had been secured for weeks, with every traffic light timed to perfection and every potential disruption identified and neutralized. Local police had swept the area 3 times in the past 24 hours, while advance teams had been stationed along the route since dawn. It was the kind of operation that had become second nature to the Royal Protection Unit, a carefully choreographed dance of security and diplomacy that allowed the royal family to maintain their connection with the public while staying safe. The children's excitement was infectious as they traveled through the London suburbs. George pointed out landmarks from previous visits, while Charlotte pressed her face to the window, waving enthusiastically at anyone who might be watching. Louis, still small enough to be easily overwhelmed by the grandeur of royal life, contentedly played with his toy car, making soft vrooming sounds that brought smiles to the faces of even the most serious protection officers. Detective Inspector Mitchell's radio crackled with regular updates from the advance team. The festival grounds were secure, the crowd barriers were in place, and the local police reported no unusual activity. She allowed herself a moment of satisfaction as she watched the familiar landmarks pass by the window. These were the moments that made all the training, all the long hours, and all the constant vigilance worthwhile. Protecting the royal family wasn't just about preventing threats, it was about preserving moments like these, allowing a mother to share special experiences with her children while serving her duty to the crown. The convoy turned onto the approach road to Hampton Court Palace, and Mitchell could see the colorful banners and decorations that marked the entrance to the Children's Garden Festival. Hundreds of families had already gathered, their excited chatter creating a warm backdrop to what promised to be a perfect day. Local dignitaries stood in a neat line near the entrance, their nervous energy barely contained as they prepared to meet the princess and her children. Garden designers had worked for months to create interactive exhibits that would engage young minds while teaching them about nature and sustainability. As the vehicles came to a smooth stop in the designated area, Mitchell felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that marked the beginning of any public engagement. This was when the real work began. The transition from the controlled environment of the vehicles to the unpredictable world of public interaction required split-second timing and absolute trust between team members. She spoke quickly into her radio, confirming positions with the security team that had been in place since early morning. Kate stepped out of the vehicle with practiced elegance, immediately turning to help her children emerge safely. George, ever conscious of his future role, straightened his shoulders and prepared to shake hands with the waiting officials. Charlotte bounced on her toes, her eyes wide with wonder at the colorful decorations surrounding them. The festival organizers had outdone themselves, creating a wonderland of interactive gardens, educational exhibits, and hands-on activities designed to spark children's interest in the natural world. The greeting line proceeded smoothly, with Kate demonstrating the perfect balance of warmth and formality that had made her such an effective representative of the monarchy. She listened intently as the festival director explained the day's schedule, nodding appreciatively at the careful thought that had gone into each activity. The children would have opportunities to plant seeds in specially prepared garden beds, learn about different types of flowers and vegetables, and even help harvest herbs that would be used in the palace kitchens. Detective Sergeant Rodriguez maintained his position just behind the family, his eyes constantly moving between the children and the surrounding crowd. He had developed an almost parental instinct for anticipating the movements of George, Charlotte, and Louis, understanding their personalities and predicting when one of them might wander off or become overwhelmed by the attention. His calm presence had become a source of comfort for the children, who had learned to trust him completely during their public appearances. The morning's first activity took place in a specially designed teaching garden where children from local schools were waiting to meet the princess. Kate knelt down to their level, genuinely interested in their questions about plants and gardening. Her background in art history might not have prepared her for technical discussions about soil composition, but her natural warmth and curiosity made every interaction meaningful. She listened carefully as 8-year-old Emma from the nearby primary school explained her science project about how different colored lights affected plant growth. George joined a group of children his own age who were learning to identify different types of seeds, while Charlotte gravitated toward a butterfly garden where colorful wings danced among carefully selected flowers. Louis, still young enough to be easily fascinated by simple pleasures, became entranced by a water feature where small fish swam among lily pads. The protection officers adjusted their positions seamlessly, maintaining security while allowing the children the freedom to explore and learn. As the morning progressed, the festival took on a life of its own. Families moved between different garden exhibits, children's laughter mixed with the gentle sounds of water features and wind chimes, and the air filled with the scents of herbs and flowers. Kate moved from group to group, her genuine interest in the educational aspects of the festival evident in every conversation. She asked thoughtful questions about sustainable gardening practices, listened to children's ideas about creating wildlife habitats, and even got her hands dirty while helping to plant a new herb garden that would provide fresh ingredients for community cooking classes. The media representatives, kept at a respectful distance by carefully positioned barriers, captured images of the princess and her children enjoying the festival atmosphere. These photos would later appear in newspapers around the world, showing the human side of royal life and the importance the family placed on environmental education. The careful balance between public access and privacy had been maintained perfectly, allowing the festival to achieve its educational goals while providing the public with glimpses of the royal family in a relaxed, natural setting. Detective Inspector Mitchell allowed herself a moment of professional satisfaction as she observed the smooth operation unfolding around her. Every aspect of the security plan was working flawlessly. The crowd remained orderly and enthusiastic without becoming overwhelming. The local police maintained perfect crowd control, and her team moved with practiced precision around the family. The advanced planning had paid off, creating an environment where the princess could focus entirely on the educational mission of the visit while her children experienced the joy of learning about nature. As they moved toward the second activity area, where the children would learn about companion planting and natural pest control, Kate paused to speak with a group of elderly volunteers who had helped create the festival gardens. These longtime gardeners shared their wisdom about traditional growing methods and seasonal planting cycles, their eyes lighting up as they recognized the princess's genuine interest in their knowledge. These unscripted moments often proved to be the most meaningful parts of royal engagements, creating connections that transcended protocol and ceremony. The morning sun climbed higher, warming the festival grounds and bringing out the full fragrances of the carefully designed gardens. Everything was proceeding exactly according to plan, with the perfect combination of education, entertainment, and royal glamour that made these events so special. The children were learning, the princess was fulfilling her role as a patron of environmental education, and the security team was maintaining their invisible but essential protection. None of them could have anticipated that in just a few short hours, this perfect morning would transform into every parent's worst nightmare, and that Detective Inspector Mitchell's carefully planned security operation would face its greatest test not from any external threat, but from a moment of pure maternal panic that would challenge everything they thought they knew about protecting the royal family. The first sign that something was amiss came at exactly 11:47 in the morning, though nobody realized its significance at the time. Prince Louis, who had been contentedly examining a collection of colorful beetles in the insect discovery area, suddenly looked up from his magnifying glass with the confused expression that only a 2-year-old could manage when their carefully ordered world shifted unexpectedly. He had been fascinated by the way the beetles moved across the specially prepared viewing area, their iridescent shells catching the filtered sunlight that streamed through the educational pavilion's transparent roof. Kate was 30 feet away, deeply engaged in a conversation with Dr. Margaret Thornfield, the festival's lead botanist, about the therapeutic benefits of gardening for children with special needs. The discussion had grown animated as they explored how different textures, colors, and scents could be used to create sensory experiences that would benefit children across the autism spectrum. Dr. Thornfield's passion for inclusive garden design had captured Kate's imagination, and she was already thinking about how these concepts might be incorporated into the gardens at some of the children's charities she supported. Detective Sergeant Rodriguez maintained his standard position, close enough to intervene if necessary but far enough away to allow natural interaction. His eyes moved in their practiced pattern, scanning the immediate area for any changes or potential concerns while keeping the 3 children within his peripheral vision. George was helping a group of school children measure soil pH levels using strips that changed color when dipped in different garden soil samples. Charlotte had discovered a sensory garden where she could touch plants with different textures, from the fuzzy softness of lamb's ear to the smooth waxy surface of succulent leaves. Louis's attention span, typical for his age, had begun to waver as the beetle exhibit lost its initial fascination. He stood up from the small wooden stool that had been specially provided for the youngest visitors, his toy car clutched tightly in his left hand while his right hand reached unconsciously for the comfort of familiar companionship. When he turned to look for his mother and found her engaged in conversation with the festival organizers, he made the decision that would set everything in motion. Instead of calling out or walking directly to her, he spotted something that captured his 2-year-old imagination completely. A small electric cart, decorated with colorful flowers and used by the gardening staff to transport supplies around the festival grounds, was parked near the edge of the educational area. To Louis, it looked exactly like an oversized version of the toy cars he played with at home, complete with a steering wheel, pedals, and even a small horn that one of the staff members had been using to announce their presence as they moved through the crowds. The cart was beautiful in its simplicity, painted in cheerful yellow with hand-painted daisies around the edges and a small sign that read Hampton Court Gardens Transportation Service. The staff member who had been using the cart, a young horticulture student named Marcus Webb, had stopped to help a family whose stroller had gotten stuck in the soft soil near one of the planting areas. He had left the cart running, as was standard practice for the quick stops they made throughout the day, and had stepped away for what he intended to be just a moment. The electric motor hummed quietly, almost inaudibly, while the brake remained engaged exactly as protocol required. Louis approached the cart with the fearless curiosity that defined his age group. The adult world often seemed designed for people much larger than himself, but here was something that appeared to be just his size, at least from his limited perspective. He had watched his parents drive cars, had sat on his father's lap while pretending to steer during private family time, and had accumulated enough understanding of basic vehicle operation to believe he could make this wonderful machine move. Detective Sergeant Rodriguez was momentarily distracted by a small commotion near the main entrance where a delivery truck was attempting to navigate around the crowd barriers. His training required him to assess every deviation from the planned schedule, and the unexpected arrival of any vehicle during an active royal engagement triggered automatic security protocols. He spoke briefly into his radio, confirming with the perimeter team that the delivery had been scheduled and approved. The conversation lasted less than 30 seconds, but, in the world of royal protection, 30 seconds was an eternity. During those crucial moments, Louis had managed to climb into the cart's driver's seat, his small hands gripping the steering wheel with determination. The cart was equipped with a simple safety system designed to prevent unauthorized use, but the system was calibrated for adult-sized users and didn't account for the possibility of a very small person who could fit through the safety barriers that would normally prevent access to the driver's area. Louis's toy car fell to the floor of the cart as he used both hands to explore the various controls that surrounded him. The cart's design included several safety features that should have prevented any unauthorized movement. A weight-sensitive seat that required adult pressure to activate the motor, a key-operated ignition system, and a deadman's brake that engaged automatically when the operator's foot left the designated pedal area. However, Louis's determination and natural mechanical curiosity led him to systematically test each control he could reach, including the small lever that staff members used to disengage the automatic safety systems when moving the cart in tight spaces. Marcus Webb finished helping the family with their stroller situation and turned back toward where he had left his cart, expecting to find it exactly as he had left it. Instead, he saw a small figure in the driver's seat, and his heart immediately jumped into his throat as he realized the implications of what he was witnessing. His training had covered many potential emergency scenarios, but royal child and unauthorized control of maintenance vehicle had not been specifically addressed in the festival safety manual. The cart began to move slowly forward as Louis accidentally discovered the accelerator pedal. His feet barely reached the floor of the cart, but his natural tendency to push himself up in the seat brought his toe into contact with the sensitive electric accelerator. The movement was gentle at first, barely perceptible, but it was enough to cause the cart to roll forward on the slight incline that led away from the educational pavilion and toward the main festival grounds where hundreds of families were enjoying the various garden exhibits. Detective Sergeant Rodriguez's radio crackled again with an update about the delivery situation, and, as he turned to acknowledge the message, his peripheral vision caught an anomaly that sent ice through his veins. The small figure that should have been Prince Louis examining beetles near the educational display was nowhere to be seen, and, in the distance, a maintenance cart was moving slowly but steadily away from the designated activity area. Professional training took over as Rodriguez immediately began the established protocol for a missing principal. His voice was calm and controlled as he spoke into his radio, using code words that would alert the entire security team without causing panic among the civilian population. Control, we have a displaced package in Sector 7, requesting immediate visual confirmation of all primary assets. The message was clear to trained ears: one of the royal children was not where he was supposed to be, and every member of the protection detail needed to locate their assigned charges immediately. Kate was still engaged in her conversation with Dr. Thornfield when Rodriguez approached with the purposeful stride that she had learned to recognize as significant. His expression remained professionally neutral, but she could read the tension in his shoulders and the slight urgency in his movement. Years of royal life had taught her to interpret the subtle signals that her protection officers used to communicate without alarming the public or disrupting the flow of an engagement. "Ma'am," Rodriguez said quietly, positioning himself so that his body would shield their conversation from any nearby cameras or curious onlookers, "I need to confirm Prince Louis's location, please." The words were careful and controlled, following the established protocol for addressing potential security concerns during public engagements. Kate's maternal instincts immediately sharpened as she turned to look toward the area where she had last seen her youngest son. The educational pavilion, which had been buzzing with activity just minutes before, suddenly seemed vast and confusing as Kate's eyes searched for the familiar sight of Louis's small figure. George was still visible near the soil testing station, his concentration focused on helping younger children understand the scientific concepts being demonstrated. Charlotte could be seen in the sensory garden, now sitting cross-legged while listening to a story about butterfly life cycles that was being told by one of the volunteer educators. But Louis was nowhere to be seen, and the beetle examination area where he had been playing was now occupied by a group of older children who were discussing the environmental importance of insect diversity with their teacher. Kate's carefully controlled public expression began to show the first signs of the concern that was building rapidly in her chest, though her years of royal training helped her maintain the appearance of casual interest rather than growing panic. "When did you last have visual confirmation?" she asked Rodriguez quietly, her voice maintaining its public register while her eyes continued their systematic search of the immediate area. The protection officer's training included precise timing protocols, and he quickly reconstructed the previous few minutes in his mind, identifying the exact moment when his attention had been diverted and calculating how much time had elapsed since then. "Approximately 3 minutes ago, ma'am." He was at the insect display with full visual contact. Rodriguez was already moving as he spoke, his trained eyes following the logical paths that a curious 2-year-old might take from the educational area. His radio remained active as other members of the security team reported in with confirmations of their assigned charges and began expanding their search patterns according to established protocols. The slow-moving maintenance cart had covered perhaps 50 yards during this exchange, its path taking it toward an area of the festival grounds where families with young children were participating in a seed-planting workshop. Louis, still fascinated by his newfound ability to make the wonderful machine respond to his commands, had no understanding of the growing concern his absence was creating among the adults responsible for his safety. To him, this was simply the most exciting adventure he had experienced since learning to climb the stairs at Kensington Palace. Marcus Webb was running now, his initial shock having given way to the realization that he needed to reach the cart before it entered an area where its slow but steady progress might pose a danger to the festival attendees. His radio calls to the maintenance supervisor were urgent but professional as he explained the situation and requested immediate assistance. The festival's emergency protocols were about to be tested in a way that none of the organizers had ever imagined possible. Detective Inspector Mitchell's voice came through Rodriguez's earpiece with the controlled authority that marked a developing situation. "All units, expand search pattern for Package 3. Maintain crowd control protocols and avoid creating public alarm. Report any unusual vehicle movement in the festival area immediately." The security net was tightening, but everyone involved knew that in situations involving young children, every second could be crucial. Kate's public composure was beginning to show hairline cracks as the reality of the situation penetrated her consciousness. Her youngest child, barely 2 years old, was somewhere in a crowded festival area filled with potential dangers, and, despite the presence of dozens of highly trained security professionals, no one seemed to know exactly where he was or what he was doing. The careful plans and extensive preparations that had promised such a perfect day were unraveling with terrifying speed, and the worst part was the knowledge that she would have to maintain her public role even as every maternal instinct screamed at her to abandon protocol and search for her baby with single-minded determination. The next few minutes unfolded with the surreal quality of a nightmare where everything familiar becomes strange and threatening. Kate excused herself from Dr. Thornfield with the kind of gracious smile that had been drilled into her through years of royal training, but her eyes never stopped scanning the crowd as she moved toward the area where Louis had last been seen. Each second that passed without locating him felt like an hour, and the festival's cheerful atmosphere began to take on an ominous quality as her imagination filled with increasingly dire possibilities. Detective Inspector Mitchell had taken command of the expanding search operation with the efficiency that comes from years of emergency training. Her team spread out across the festival grounds in a carefully coordinated pattern, each officer assigned specific sectors while maintaining radio contact and avoiding any obvious signs that might alert the public to a developing crisis. The challenge was immense. They needed to conduct a thorough search of a large area filled with hundreds of people while maintaining the appearance that nothing unusual was happening. The maintenance cart, meanwhile, continued its slow but steady progress toward the heart of the festival. Louis had discovered that by pushing harder on the pedal he could make the cart move faster, though his 2-year-old coordination meant that his control remained somewhat erratic. The cart weaved gently back and forth along the gravel path, its decorative flower arrangements swaying with each change of direction. To the casual observer, it might have appeared that someone was simply driving very carefully through the crowd, taking extra precautions to avoid the families and children enjoying the various garden exhibits. Marcus Webb had managed to get within 20 yards of the cart when he encountered an unexpected obstacle. A group of elderly visitors had gathered around a particularly impressive rose display, completely blocking the path he needed to take to intercept Lewis's joyride. The seniors were deeply engaged in a technical discussion about pruning techniques with one of the head gardeners, and any attempt to push through their group would certainly create the kind of disturbance that could escalate into exactly the type of public incident that the security team was desperately trying to avoid. "Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen," Marcus called out with forced cheerfulness, "I need to retrieve our maintenance cart from just ahead of you. Could I possibly squeeze through?" His voice carried none of the urgency he felt as he watched the cart continue to pull away from him, now heading toward an area where a children's choir from a local primary school was preparing to perform for the visiting families. The thought of Prince Louis driving an electric cart into a group of performing children sent waves of anxiety through his entire body. Detective Sergeant Rodriguez had reached Kate's side and was providing her with regular updates as the search operation expanded. "Ma'am, we have visual confirmation of Prince George at the soil testing station and Princess Charlotte in the sensory garden. All perimeter teams are actively searching for Prince Louis, and we've implemented containment protocols to ensure he remains within the secured festival area." His words were meant to provide reassurance, but Kate could hear the underlying tension that indicated the situation was more serious than anyone wanted to admit. "How long has it been?" Kate asked, her royal training warring with her maternal instincts as she struggled to maintain public composure while processing the reality that her baby was missing in a crowd of strangers. The festival continued around them, families laughing and children playing, completely unaware that a crisis was developing just yards away from their innocent enjoyment. 7 minutes since last visual confirmation," Rodriguez replied, his own radio crackling with updates from team members spread across the festival grounds. "We're expanding the search radius systematically, but the festival layout provides good natural containment. There are limited exit points, and all are monitored." He didn't mention that those same features that provided security also created numerous hiding places and potential danger zones where a curious toddler could encounter serious hazards. The cart had now entered the main festival area, where families sat on blankets enjoying packed lunches while their children explored the various interactive exhibits scattered throughout the grounds. Louis, completely absorbed in his adventure, had no awareness that his presence behind the wheel of the maintenance cart was beginning to attract curious glances from some of the other festival attendees. A few parents had begun to wonder why such a young child appeared to be driving the staff vehicle, but the general assumption seemed to be that this was some sort of special demonstration or educational exhibit. Sarah Chen, a mother of 3 who was enjoying the festival with her own children, was the first person to realize that something wasn't quite right about the situation unfolding near her family's picnic spot. She had been watching the approaching cart with mild interest, expecting to see a staff member emerge to collect something or make an announcement about the afternoon's scheduled activities. Instead, she found herself staring at what appeared to be a toddler gripping the steering wheel with intense concentration while the vehicle moved slowly but persistently toward the area where her own children were playing. "David," she said to her husband, who was unpacking sandwiches from their cooler, "look at that cart. Am I seeing things, or is there a very young child driving it?" David looked up from the food preparation and followed his wife's pointing finger to the approaching vehicle. His first instinct was to assume that this must be some sort of supervised activity, perhaps a demonstration of child-friendly garden equipment or an educational exhibit about transportation. But, as the cart drew closer, he could clearly see that there was no adult supervision and that the child appeared to be operating the vehicle entirely on his own. Detective Inspector Mitchell's radio crackled with a report that sent ice through her veins. "Control, this is Perimeter 7. We have a civilian report of a young child operating a maintenance vehicle in Sector 4. Requesting immediate visual confirmation and response team deployment." The words confirmed what she had begun to suspect but had hoped to avoid. Prince Louis had somehow gained access to festival equipment and was now operating it without supervision in an area filled with other children and families. "All units, converge on Sector 4 immediately," Mitchell commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had trained for exactly these types of emergency situations. "Maintain low-profile approach and avoid creating public alarm." We need immediate but discreet intervention. She was already moving toward the reported location, her mind racing through the potential complications and safety hazards that could develop if the situation wasn't resolved quickly and professionally. Kate received the update about the maintenance cart sighting with a mixture of relief and renewed terror. Relief because Lewis had been located and appeared to be safe, but terror because her 2-year-old was apparently operating mechanical equipment in a crowded area where any number of accidents could occur. The image of Lewis behind the wheel of any vehicle, no matter how slow or supposedly safe, violated every protective instinct she possessed as a mother. "I need to see him," she said to Rodriguez, her voice carrying a tone that brooked no argument despite the careful respect she maintained for security protocols. "Right now." The detective sergeant understood that this was not a request but a statement of maternal determination that would override any considerations of protocol or procedure. His job was to keep her safe while helping her respond to the crisis involving her child. The cart had slowed considerably as Lewis became distracted by a butterfly that had landed on the hood of the vehicle. His natural 2-year-old tendency to become completely absorbed in whatever captured his immediate attention meant that he had temporarily forgotten about the pedals and steering wheel in favor of trying to communicate with the colorful insect that had joined him on his adventure. The cart coasted to a near stop just yards away from where the children's choir was setting up their performance area. Marcus Webb finally managed to navigate through the group of Rose enthusiasts and was now within 10 yards of the cart. He could see Lewis clearly, sitting in the driver's seat with his attention completely focused on the butterfly, his small hands reaching out tentatively toward the insect while his feet dangled well above the cart's pedals. The scene would have been adorable under different circumstances, but Marcus was acutely aware that he was looking at a member of the royal family in a potentially dangerous situation, and that his actions over the next few minutes could have consequences that extended far beyond the boundaries of the festival. "Hello there, little fellow," Marcus called out in his friendliest voice as he approached the cart slowly, his hands visible and non-threatening. "That's a beautiful butterfly you've found. Would you like to come see some more butterflies in our special butterfly garden?" His training in child development had taught him that direct commands or urgent requests often caused young children to become defensive or frightened, potentially making dangerous situations worse rather than better. Lewis looked up from the butterfly with the wide-eyed expression that came naturally to his age group when addressed by unfamiliar adults. His toy car lay forgotten on the floor of the cart as he tried to process this new element in his adventure. The butterfly chose that moment to flutter away, leaving Lewis momentarily disappointed but also more aware of his surroundings and the fact that he was surrounded by people he didn't recognize. Detective Inspector Mitchell arrived at the scene just as Marcus was beginning his careful approach to the cart. She positioned herself where she could observe the interaction while remaining ready to intervene if the situation required immediate action. Her radio remained active as she coordinated with the other members of her team who were establishing a discreet perimeter around the area to ensure that the resolution of the incident remained as private as possible. Kate appeared at Mitchell's side, having covered the distance between the educational pavilion and the main festival area with a speed that demonstrated exactly how little royal protocol mattered when her child's safety was at stake. She could see Lewis clearly now, sitting in the driver's seat of the maintenance cart, looking small and slightly confused but apparently unharmed. The relief that flooded through her was so intense that she had to steady herself against the nearest festival display to avoid showing visible weakness in such a public setting. "He looks fine," Rodriguez murmured quietly, though his eyes never stopped scanning for potential complications or developing threats. "But we need to extract him carefully to avoid creating a scene that could become a security or public relations issue." The delicate balance between child safety and public perception required careful navigation, especially given the dozens of cameras and smartphones that were undoubtedly present among the festival attendees. The children's choir, consisting of 24 students ranging in age from 6 to 11, was completely unaware of the drama unfolding just yards away from their designated performance area. Their teacher, Mrs. Patricia Williams, was focused on making final adjustments to their formation and ensuring that each child had their sheet music properly organized for their presentation to the princess and her family. The irony of the situation was not lost on Detective Inspector Mitchell, who realized that they were trying to prevent a security incident from disrupting an event that was specifically designed to showcase children's talents for the very child who was currently creating the security concern. Marcus had managed to get within arm's reach of the cart when Lewis suddenly remembered the fascinating controls that had brought him this far. His small hand reached for the accelerator pedal just as his attention was caught by the sound of children singing scales in preparation for their performance. The combination of renewed interest in the cart's operation and distraction from the approaching choir created exactly the type of unpredictable situation that made child-related emergencies so challenging for even the most experienced security professionals. The cart lurched forward suddenly, as Lewis's foot made contact with the accelerator, causing Marcus to jump backward to avoid being struck by the slow-moving but still potentially dangerous vehicle. The sudden movement also caught the attention of several nearby families, who began to realize that they were witnessing something unusual and potentially concerning. The careful efforts to maintain discretion were beginning to break down as more people noticed the small child operating the maintenance equipment without any apparent supervision. Detective Inspector Mitchell made the decision that would define the next phase of the crisis. Speaking quickly into her radio, she authorized the implementation of emergency intervention protocols, which meant that the team would prioritize child safety over all other considerations, including public discretion and protocol maintenance. The situation had reached the point where immediate action was necessary, regardless of the potential consequences for the carefully planned public engagement or the exposure it might create for the royal family. What happened next unfolded with the kind of split-second timing that separates successful emergency interventions from disasters. As the cart lurched forward with Lewis's renewed interest in the accelerator pedal, Detective Inspector Mitchell abandoned all pretense of maintaining a low profile and moved directly toward the vehicle with the purposeful stride of someone whose training had prepared her for exactly this type of crisis. Her years of experience had taught her that there comes a moment in every emergency when decisive action becomes more important than careful planning. Kate's maternal instincts overrode every aspect of her royal training as she watched her youngest child operating a potentially dangerous piece of equipment in a crowded area. Without waiting for security clearance or protocol guidance, she stepped forward and called out in the gentle but authoritative voice she used when Lewis was about to do something potentially harmful at home. "Lewis, darling, Mummy's here. Can you please stay very still for me?" Her words carried across the immediate area, and several nearby families turned to see what was happening. The sound of his mother's voice had an immediate effect on Lewis, though not quite the calming influence that Kate had hoped for. Instead of remaining still, he turned in the driver's seat to locate her, his sudden movement causing him to accidentally press the accelerator more firmly while simultaneously pulling the steering wheel to one side. The cart responded by speeding up slightly and beginning to veer toward the area where the children's choir was completing their final preparations for what was supposed to be a special performance for the royal family. Marcus Webb realized that his careful, gradual approach was no longer viable given the cart's change of direction and speed. Drawing on his experience working with young children in various educational settings, he made a tactical decision to create a distraction that would capture Lewis's attention and hopefully cause him to remove his foot from the accelerator pedal. "Lewis," he called out with enthusiasm, "look at this amazing butterfly net I have. Would you like to help me catch some butterflies for our special butterfly house?" The mention of butterflies did indeed capture Lewis's interest, but, unfortunately, his attempt to turn and look at the promised butterfly net caused him to grip the steering wheel more tightly and inadvertently increase pressure on the accelerator. The cart's electric motor responded with a subtle increase in speed that brought it dangerously close to the edge of the performance area where Mrs. Williams was making final adjustments to her students' formation, completely unaware of the approaching vehicle and the crisis developing behind her. Detective Inspector Mitchell had closed the distance to within 15 feet of the cart when she made the decision that would later be analyzed and reviewed in security briefings for years to come. Abandoning standard protocol for gradual, low-profile intervention, she moved directly into the cart's path and called out with the kind of authoritative voice that had been trained to command immediate attention in emergency situations. "Lewis, this is Inspector Mitchell. I need you to take your foot off the pedal right now and look at me." The combination of an unfamiliar adult using his name with such authority and the sudden appearance of someone directly in front of the cart had exactly the effect Mitchell had hoped for. Lewis immediately lifted his foot from the accelerator and focused his attention on this new person who seemed to know him and who was speaking with the kind of grown-up seriousness that usually meant something important was happening. The cart began to slow immediately as the electric motor responded to the lack of pressure on the accelerator pedal. Kate had been moving parallel to the cart's path, staying close enough to intervene if necessary while being careful not to startle Lewis into making any sudden movements that might worsen the situation. When she saw Inspector Mitchell step directly into the vehicle's path, her heart stopped for a moment as she realized the security officer was putting herself at potential risk to protect her child. The image of this dedicated professional placing herself between a moving vehicle and Prince Louis would remain burned into Kate's memory for the rest of her life. The cart rolled to a complete stop just 3 feet from where Inspector Mitchell stood with her arms slightly extended in a gesture that combined authority with reassurance. Louis sat in the driver's seat looking somewhat confused by the sudden attention from multiple adults but not appearing frightened or distressed by the situation. His natural 2-year-old resilience was serving him well, though he seemed to sense that his adventure had reached some sort of conclusion even if he didn't fully understand why. "Hello, Prince Louis," Inspector Mitchell said as she approached the now stationary cart with the kind of calm professionalism that marked her as someone who had dealt with challenging situations involving children before. "You've been having quite an adventure, haven't you? Your mummy is right here, and we're all very glad that you're safe." Her voice carried none of the tension she felt as she realized how close they had come to a potentially serious incident. Kate reached the cart at almost the same moment as Inspector Mitchell, her relief at seeing Louis safe and unharmed so overwhelming that she had to grip the edge of the vehicle to steady herself. Years of royal training had prepared her for many challenging situations, but nothing had equipped her for the terror of watching her toddler operate a motor vehicle in a crowded public space while she was powerless to intervene immediately. "Louis," she said gently, reaching out to touch his small hand where it still gripped the steering wheel, "you gave Mummy quite a scare. Are you ready to come out of the cart now?" Her voice carried the kind of loving relief that only a mother could express, though she was acutely aware that dozens of people were now watching their interaction and that cameras might be capturing images that would require careful management later. Louis looked between his mother and Inspector Mitchell with the slightly guilty expression that suggested he was beginning to understand that his cart adventure might not have been entirely appropriate, though his 2-year-old mind couldn't quite grasp the full implications of what had occurred. "Mummy," he said in his small voice, "the cart goes vroom like my toy car. I made it go." His pride in his mechanical accomplishment was evident despite the growing awareness that the adults around him seemed concerned rather than impressed. Detective Sergeant Rodriguez had arrived during the final moments of the crisis and was now coordinating with the other members of the security team to establish a discreet perimeter around the cart while Kate and Inspector Mitchell handled the immediate situation with Louis. His radio crackled with status updates as the team confirmed that the immediate threat had been neutralized and that all 3 royal children were now accounted for and safe. Marcus Webb breathed a sigh of relief that seemed to come from his very soul as he watched Inspector Mitchell and the princess safely extract Prince Louis from the driver's seat of his cart. The young horticulture student realized that his momentary inattention had nearly resulted in a crisis that could have had far-reaching consequences, and he was already mentally preparing for the extensive debriefing sessions that would undoubtedly follow this incident. The children's choir, still blissfully unaware of how close they had come to being involved in a security incident, continued their vocal warm-ups under Mrs. Williams's guidance. The irony was not lost on anyone in the security team that they had just prevented a crisis from disrupting an event that was specifically planned to showcase children's talents for the very child who had created the emergency in the first place. As Kate lifted Louis out of the cart's driver's seat, she was struck by how normal he felt in her arms despite the extraordinary circumstances of the previous few minutes. He was still her baby, still the same curious and adventurous toddler he had been before his impromptu driving lesson, but the experience had reminded her of how quickly a perfectly planned day could spiral into every parent's worst nightmare. "Inspector Mitchell," Kate said quietly as she settled Louis more securely in her arms, "I cannot adequately express my gratitude for your quick thinking and professional response. You quite literally placed yourself between my child and potential harm, and I will never forget that." The genuine emotion in her voice transcended the formal language required by royal protocol, creating a moment of human connection between a mother and the woman who had helped save her child. Inspector Mitchell accepted the thanks with the professional grace that marked her as someone who understood both the importance of her role and the human cost of the responsibility she carried. "Ma'am, ensuring the safety of your family is not just my professional duty but my personal honor. I'm simply grateful that Prince Louis is safe and that we were able to resolve the situation without incident." The festival organizers, who had become aware that some sort of situation had developed in the main festival area, approached carefully to assess whether any adjustments needed to be made to the day's remaining schedule. Dr. Thornfield, the botanist who had been speaking with Kate when the crisis began, looked particularly concerned as she realized that her engaging conversation about therapeutic gardening might have contributed to the distraction that allowed Lewis to wander off in the first place. "Your Royal Highness," Dr. Thornfield said with evident concern, "I hope that our discussion didn't contribute to any confusion about Prince Louis's whereabouts. I would be devastated to think that my enthusiasm for the educational aspects of the festival had created any safety concerns for your family." Her genuine distress was evident, though Kate was quick to reassure her that no blame belonged to anyone except perhaps the natural curiosity of a 2-year-old boy. Louis, meanwhile, had spotted his forgotten toy car on the floor of the maintenance cart and was reaching toward it with the single-minded focus that characterized his age group. Inspector Mitchell retrieved the small wooden vehicle and handed it to him with a smile, noting that he immediately began making the soft vrooming sounds that had apparently inspired his interest in the larger, real vehicle that had caused so much excitement. The security team had managed the situation with remarkable efficiency, containing what could have been a major incident within a relatively small area and ensuring that most of the festival attendees remained unaware that anything unusual had occurred. The discreet positioning of officers and the quick resolution of the crisis meant that the day's schedule could continue largely as planned, though everyone involved would be significantly more vigilant for the remainder of the visit. Detective Sergeant Rodriguez approached with an update on the security assessment that had been conducted while the immediate crisis was being resolved. "Ma'am, we've completed a full review of the incident timeline and identified the factors that contributed to the situation. We're implementing additional protocols immediately to prevent any similar occurrences during the remainder of today's engagement and for future events involving the children." Kate nodded her appreciation for the thoroughness of the security response while unconsciously tightening her hold on Louis, who seemed completely content to be back in his mother's arms with his toy car restored to his possession. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the crisis was beginning to fade, leaving behind the shaky relief that follows any emergency involving a child's safety. The maintenance cart sat silent now, its decorative flowers slightly askew from the excitement but otherwise unchanged from its innocent appearance as a piece of garden festival equipment. It was difficult to believe that such a benign-looking vehicle had been the center of a royal security incident just minutes before, and Marcus Webb made a mental note to review all equipment protocols to ensure that similar access issues could never occur again. As the immediate crisis subsided, everyone involved began to process the reality that they had just experienced one of those rare moments when careful planning, extensive preparation, and professional expertise were tested by the unpredictable nature of a curious toddler with an adventurous spirit and access to interesting machinery. The remainder of the Children's Garden Festival proceeded with a heightened sense of awareness that was invisible to most attendees but palpable to every member of the security team. Kate carried Louis for the next 20 minutes, her maternal instincts unwilling to let him out of immediate physical contact despite his growing protests about wanting to explore the remaining exhibits on his own. The incident had reminded everyone involved that royal children, despite their extraordinary circumstances, remained fundamentally children with all the curiosity, unpredictability, and fearless exploration that defined their age group. Inspector Mitchell used the experience as an immediate learning opportunity, quietly briefing her team on the factors that had contributed to the crisis and the response protocols that had proven effective. The incident would later become a case study in royal protection training, demonstrating how quickly routine situations could develop into emergencies and how the combination of professional training, quick thinking, and coordinated response could prevent minor incidents from escalating into major crises. George and Charlotte, who had been largely unaware of the drama surrounding their younger brother's adventure, continued to enjoy the educational aspects of the festival with the focused attention that came naturally to their respective personalities. George found particular fascination in the composting demonstration, where he learned about the scientific processes that transformed garden waste into nutrient-rich soil. Charlotte gravitated toward a storytelling session where a local librarian was reading tales about magical gardens and the creatures that lived within them. The children's choir performance proceeded exactly as planned, their clear voices carrying across the festival grounds as they sang traditional English folk songs about nature, seasons, and growing things. Mrs. Williams beamed with pride as her students performed flawlessly, completely unaware that they had nearly been part of a very different sort of excitement just minutes before their presentation began. Kate listened to their performance with genuine appreciation, though her eyes never strayed far from Lewis, who sat contentedly on her lap while clutching his toy car. Dr. Thornfield approached during the choir performance with a carefully prepared presentation about the therapeutic garden project that had sparked their earlier conversation. She had spent the intervening time organizing her materials and preparing visual aids that would help illustrate the concepts they had been discussing when the crisis interrupted their dialogue. Her dedication to the educational mission of the festival was evident in her determination to complete their conversation despite the dramatic interruption. "Your Royal Highness, Dr." Thornfield said quietly, positioning herself so as not to interfere with Kate's ability to monitor all three children while they listened to the choir. "If you're still interested in learning about the therapeutic applications of garden design, I've prepared some materials that might help illustrate the concepts we were exploring earlier. Of course, I completely understand if you'd prefer to focus on enjoying the remainder of the festival with your family." Kate appreciated the botanist's sensitivity to the changed circumstances while recognizing the genuine passion that drove Dr. Thornfield's work with therapeutic gardening. The incident with Lewis had heightened her awareness of how quickly children could encounter unexpected situations, but it had also reinforced her appreciation for the dedicated professionals who created safe, educational environments where children could learn and explore. "I would very much like to continue our conversation," Kate replied, adjusting Lewis on her lap while keeping one eye on George and Charlotte, who were now helping to distribute seed packets to other children at the conclusion of the choir performance. "The work you're doing with sensory garden design has tremendous potential for the children's charities I support, and I'm eager to learn more about how these environments can benefit children with different learning styles and developmental needs." Detective Sergeant Rodriguez had positioned himself where he could maintain visual contact with all three royal children while monitoring the security perimeter that had been subtly reinforced following the morning's incident. His radio remained active with periodic status updates from other team members, though the frequency of communications had decreased as the situation stabilized and normal security protocols resumed their effectiveness. Marcus Webb had spent the time since the incident conducting a thorough review of all festival equipment and access protocols with his supervisor. The maintenance cart that had provided Prince Louis with his unexpected adventure was now secured with additional safety measures, including a more sophisticated locking system and revised procedures for temporary equipment stops. The incident had served as a valuable reminder that even the most innocent-seeming equipment could pose unexpected challenges in environments where curious children were present. As the afternoon progressed, the festival atmosphere gradually returned to its earlier mood of relaxed enjoyment. Families continued to move between the various garden exhibits, children participated enthusiastically in the hands-on learning activities, and the educational goals of the event were being achieved exactly as the organizers had hoped. The brief crisis that had tested everyone's emergency response capabilities was becoming integrated into the day's experience rather than overshadowing it. Louis, perhaps sensing the increased attention he was receiving, had become unusually cooperative and affectionate, content to remain close to his mother while observing the festival activities from the security of her arms. His adventure with the maintenance cart seemed to have satisfied his curiosity about operating motor vehicles, at least for the immediate future, and he showed renewed interest in his toy car, which had apparently gained significance through its association with his brief career as a driver of real machinery. The media representatives who were covering the royal family's visit remained unaware that any unusual incident had occurred, their attention focused on capturing images of the princess and her children enjoying the educational aspects of the festival. The security team's successful management of the crisis meant that the public narrative of the day would remain focused on the positive educational mission rather than the emergency response that had dominated the morning's final hour. Inspector Mitchell found herself reflecting on the rapid sequence of events that had transformed a routine royal engagement into a crisis management exercise and back again to a successful public appearance. Her training had prepared her for many types of security challenges, but the unpredictable nature of child-related incidents required a flexibility and quick thinking that went beyond standard protocols. The successful resolution of the morning's crisis had reinforced her confidence in her team's ability to adapt and respond effectively to unexpected situations. As the royal family prepared to transition to the afternoon's scheduled activities, Kate took a moment to personally thank each member of the security team who had participated in locating Louis and managing the cart incident. Her words of gratitude went beyond the formal acknowledgments required by protocol, reflecting the genuine appreciation of a mother whose child had been protected by dedicated professionals who understood the human cost of their responsibilities. Inspector Mitchell, Kate said during a private moment between scheduled activities, "I want you to know that your actions this morning exemplified everything I value most about the people who have dedicated their careers to protecting our family. You demonstrated not only professional competence but genuine care for Lewis's well-being, and you did so in a way that prioritized his safety while maintaining the dignity of the engagement. I am deeply grateful for your service." The afternoon activities proceeded smoothly, with enhanced security awareness creating an environment where the children could continue to enjoy the educational opportunities while remaining safely within the protective oversight of their security detail. George discovered a fascination with butterfly life cycles, Charlotte became absorbed in a discussion about pollinating insects, and Lewis remained contentedly close to his mother while occasionally offering commentary about various exhibits in his developing vocabulary. The festival organizers, initially concerned that the morning's incident might have disrupted the day's carefully planned schedule, found themselves impressed by the resilience and professionalism demonstrated by both the royal family and their security team. The crisis had been managed so effectively that most festival attendees remained unaware that anything unusual had occurred, allowing the educational mission of the event to proceed exactly as intended. Dr. Thornfield was able to complete her presentation about therapeutic garden design, and Kate's engagement with the material demonstrated genuine interest that went beyond diplomatic politeness. Their conversation covered practical applications for children with autism spectrum disorders, the benefits of sensory gardens for children recovering from trauma, and the potential for horticultural therapy to be integrated into existing children's programs supported by royal patronage. As the afternoon drew to a close, the royal family prepared for their departure with the same careful coordination that had marked their arrival, though with significantly heightened awareness of the potential for unexpected developments. Lewis rode in Kate's arms to the waiting vehicles, his toy car clutched securely in one hand while the other maintained contact with his mother's jacket, as if unconsciously ensuring that he remained connected to the safety she represented. The convoy's departure from Hampton Court Palace proceeded exactly according to the revised security protocols that had been implemented following the morning's incident. Detective Inspector Mitchell rode in the lead vehicle, her radio active with confirmation messages from team members positioned along the return route. The day had tested their emergency response capabilities and had ultimately demonstrated the effectiveness of their training and the strength of their professional relationships. During the return journey to Kensington Palace, Kate found herself reflecting on the morning's events and the reminder they provided about the delicate balance between allowing her children to experience normal childhood activities and ensuring their safety in circumstances that were anything but normal. The incident had reinforced her appreciation for the dedicated professionals who made it possible for her family to maintain connections with the public while managing the unique security challenges that came with their royal status. Lewis fell asleep in his car seat during the journey home, his toy car still clutched in his small hand and a peaceful expression on his face that suggested he remained unaware of the concern his adventure had created among the adults responsible for his safety. The sight of her youngest child sleeping peacefully after the morning's excitement filled Kate with the kind of relief that only parents can understand when a potentially dangerous situation resolves safely. The day's events would later be analyzed and reviewed by security professionals, incorporated into training protocols for future engagements involving royal children, and remembered as an example of how quickly routine situations can become emergencies and how professional training, quick thinking, and coordinated response can prevent minor incidents from escalating into major crises. But, for Kate, the most important outcome was simple: her child was safe, her family was intact, and they had been protected by dedicated professionals who understood that their most important responsibility was ensuring that royal children could remain children, even within the extraordinary circumstances of their public lives.